what are caregivers wanting to feel, what are caregivers needing to feel safe to like go back and start feeling comfortable having in-person visits take place?
Overall, it's trust in all the different players. I think it's like, is the room actually going to be cleaned, or is it going to be baby sucking on toys that this little one's then going to turn around in the next visit and suck on the same toy? Is the car seat going to be cleaned, or is this child going to be put into a car seat that another child just sucked all over the car seat straps? So there's so many players in family time visits that it's kind of trust. Like, is everybody, if there was reassurance that everybody's going to do their role and the screening's going to happen like it's supposed to, then it's like, okay, yeah, it's still scary, but there's a lot of structure put into making sure everybody's as safe as possible. But I think, like, just kind of the world right now, it's very hard to step out of your cocoon and trust everybody else to be like, just kind of like we all do, like, are they social distancing? Oh, I don't think they are. Look at that. And so,
yeah, I think when you're going to like, I've had parents tell me like, well, is that a foster parent at the store that's not wearing masks when they're going grocery shopping, right? Because there's half the people wearing masks, half the people not wearing masks. And so, and parents feeling like, well, I don't have, I've been using the same mask for 3 weeks, right? Because I don't have the ability to get more masks, right? And, so I've started ordering masks for families, right? Because they're relatively cheap. You can get 50 of them for, $20 on Amazon. And so, I think that for parents, they're feeling helpless, wanting to see their kids, and then also being really worried about how it's going to look if they don't necessarily have the COVID supplies. A lot of families that I'm working with are like, where do I get the COVID supplies? And I'm like, man, where do you get the COVID supplies?
yeah.
Do you create your own basket? What does that look like? To have limits on what you can buy, right? And then, but you're buying not for yourself, you're buying for other families, right? You have to go to 12 stores to get 24 bottles of hand sanitizer, because of the limit too. So I think that parents are feeling, helpless and not very empowered. Like, a lot of them have been kind of saying like, we're last on the list, which is, it's disheartening, and I think about the ones that I talk to, and then I think about, visits are one of the primary ways that we keep families engaged in cases, and we took that away for 60 days. So, trying to track parents down that we've lost, and hoping that we, like, I pray that we are able to find them and get them back. It's definitely a different time to be doing this work. Shannon, how are social workers, as you guys are kind of like opening up? Like, I know that there's been essential workers as like CPS investigators, but a lot of CFWS were, remotely working. As you guys start opening up the offices, how are workers feeling about coming back and being around people?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I mean, I think that is also really scary for social workers, because when it's still hard and scary to go out and see the families on your own caseload, because again, you have all those same issues. Like, what are these families doing when I'm not around, and how do I know that they're following the guidelines? And now I'm walking into this home. And some of the guidance that we've been given is to like keep extra changes of clothes with us during the day, so we can change our clothes if we've been in a home where we have been exposed to something. And, like, even the concept of preparing for that is frightening. But then when you start to compound the idea that, in an office, different offices across the state are of different sizes for sure. But I'm from Region 4, and so here we have a lot of social workers in the office. And so when you consider that every social worker might be seeing 20 families a month, I mean, there's hundreds of homes that we're going into just on the CFWS side, not even counting the CPS investigators. And so there's a lot of, for me, just thinking, there's fear around thinking about, well, even if I don't go into a home where there's exposure, but I go into the office and I happen to be in the ladies' room at the same time as somebody who was in a home where there was an exposure, or even because we have shared buildings with other state agencies, right? So we have DSHS that's co-located with my office and things like that. So even if I'm, in the lunchroom and the handle to the refrigerator is not clean, there's so many people in these buildings, and we are all going out into the field and seeing so many other people. It just feels like the risk of exposure is much, much higher than in other workplaces. If you work in an office space where it's just your coworkers and your coworkers don't go anywhere else besides their own houses, that feels different, I think, compared to working in a workspace where that everybody is out in the field constantly and then bringing back whatever they've been exposed to one central location where we can all get it. The same thing goes around supplies when we think about state vehicles, because we're supposed to be using state vehicles to the extent possible whenever there's one available. And so it's that same thing like Katie was talking about, the car seats for kids being clean. Well, that same concern exists for social workers of, I'm going to touch the steering wheel and the gear shift and the seat belt. And did the person before me wipe it all down? Did I wipe it all down? Did I have the supplies to wipe it all down every single time?
Mm-hmm.
And so my office has already had to do 2 deep cleanings because of exposures that we're aware of, and that's when people really weren't in the office, right? Only in the office minimally to pick up a car, to pick up supplies. But I can imagine that it's likely to happen again the more people you start bringing back into the office. So there's fear there. And then not just for our own well-being, but just also keeping in mind that if I get exposed and then I'm going around to all these other homes and knowing that I could be an agent who's bringing this disease with me to other homes, that's a big pressure. And again, the word guilt comes to mind. Like I don't want to be responsible, and I know my coworkers don't want to be responsible for spreading this thing. So similar to what you guys have said, there's fear and there's anxiety and there's helplessness. I think that those feelings are universal, regardless of your role. Mm-hmm. We're all struggling through this together with a lot of those same feelings.